Tonight we're going to be talking about community. Christianity is not primarily a moral system or a set of rules by which we live. Like all religions, it's a series of truth claims. One of those claims is that there is a God, the creator of the universe, who holds in his essence all goodness. This one God is the source of all things true and good, and has given us access to those true and good things. The Bible is, Christians believe and have good reasons to believe, the way in which God has spoken to the people he created, instructing them how best to live. I start this way because I think it's important to believe in God as the basis for truth before we can accept him as a basis for morality or the way that we live. Christianity is the only major religion thanks, Galen, that tells us that if its truth claims aren't true, we shouldn't hold the religious aspects of the faith at all. In 1 Corinthians 15, 14, and 17, Paul says, "And if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. And if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile." This is a radically bold thing for a teacher, an apostle of the church, to say. He is willing to hang the entire religious system and everyone's experiences on a single truth claim. If Christ has not really been raised from the dead, if God did not do what he really said he would in his word to his people, we should not hold the Christian faith. It's futile. It's useless. Christ had to actually live, actually die, and actually be raised, or you shouldn't be a Christian. This claim is unique in the world's religions. I wanted to start here because this goes against some more modern interpretations of what it means to be a person of faith. Many will tell you that what matters is not what is true in the real history of the real world and the actual universe, but rather what's important is what you believe to be true. It is, after all, your beliefs that influence your actions most, and as long as those beliefs make you a good person, then who cares if it's true or not? Well, I care a lot, and I think you should too. Who wants to live under a false thing? If we ask ourselves, what does it mean to live a good life? We have to know where to look for true answers. Many philosophers have asked this question, and we'll read Plato and Aristotle and Kant and Mill on this subject very specifically, and so many others who will address it along the way of whatever else they're trying to say. It's a hard question to get around. If you want to make any argument particularly interesting, you're going to have to talk about this a little bit, especially any story. But for my purposes, I'm going to focus on one aspect. If there is a God who designed and created the universe, wouldn't it make sense to listen to what he has to say about what makes a good life? If there isn't a God who created and designed the universe, or if there isn't just one God who did, then I guess we've got a kind of free-for-all situation, and we can all decide how we want to live, because there's no one who knows more than us who would be dictating it down to us. But if there is one God who has created the universe, then he might have something to say about how we should live, and it would make sense for us to listen to him. This should be what sets a Christian moral code apart, and therefore what sets a Christian school apart. Your study of true things should and it will, if you let it, naturally flow into the formation of your moral character. If one God created the universe, and he is true, and from him all goodness comes, then what we believe and what we will do must be fully integrated with the true things of the universe. that when we ask what is good, we ask a meaningful question that is asking about the truth or falsehood of a thing, not just a preference for a way to live. We ask a meaningful question that the great writers of literature have had to work within in order to tell any story worth telling. Stories only work because there are things out there that are good, and they can be universally represented no matter what the culture or context is. That's why we can read from all across the world and still notice who a hero is in a story, right? It's not like you get confused about who's the bad guy and who's the hero, because everyone's acting totally different. There are cultural changes, but there aren't core changes. One of the things I love about school is that we have the opportunity to live these truths out in complete harmony with one another. One of the major challenges of being at a school is that how you live with one another and act to one another and think about one another will influence what you're able to accomplish in the classroom. They can't be apart from one another. This is another way in which all knowledge is one. If you know the truth, but you can't live out the good, the truth will look like a lie in you. You shouldn't be able to do the reading we do and the work that we do without it changing how you look at other people, how you live your life, and how you think about your own future and family and friends. So after everything we've talked about with what we read and how you take on your education for yourself, it's time for us to talk about how we're going to treat one another this year. And naturally, that leads me to think about some of the things that we're going to be reading, or some of you have already read. I've been thinking a lot about this summer, both for you guys and for the teachers that I'm going to talk to you on Friday. And in thinking about it, today I realized I'd been dwelling on heroes and hero myth. In the Iliad, great men are made up of particular characteristics that are pretty universal to them. If we think about Achilles and Agamemnon, Menelaus, Odysseus, Hector, and Ajax, we see these gods, these lords among men. Sometimes they're described quite literally that way, right? Agamemnon is striding amongst the other captains as he's rallying the armies in Book 2, and he is described as a god among them because of his power and his height and everything about him. At various times, these men are described as godlike in strength, in appearance, in their well-deserved pride, or in their wisdom. This is the world of the strong man, made for them and ruled by them. And notice it's not just physical strength that's glorified. It's wisdom and cunning as exemplified in Odysseus. Its physical beauty is demonstrated so disastrously by Paris and by Helen. Its leadership and riches is modeled in Agamemnon, Hector, and Menelaus. And of course, it is immense physical strength that comes from all of them, but maybe perhaps most especially from Achilles. Whatever the particular qualities, greatness is required in order to rule the world of the Iliad and the Odyssey and to be the protagonist in any of their stories worth telling. These are kings who lead their people into battle, who stand on the front lines, and who maintain their power through great feats of glory and brilliance and strength. The warrior myth and legend continues long after the height of the Greek world and comes to us from the north through the various sagas of the Volsungs and their families, from the east in Lao Tzu or the barbaric west of England in the Saxon days. A change begins to occur. And I think we see it by the time of Beowulf, at least. Probably earlier, but Beowulf is the one I'm most familiar with. Here we have a story of a great warrior, someone who could go toe-to-toe with some of those great Greek warriors. But he's someone who has come to help a people group that is not his own in a battle that has relatively little fame or merit to it. He has come to the aid of another king, Hrothgar, who has in turn seen it as his duty as a guardian of his people not to enter that battle. I sometimes wonder, since Hrothgar is described in such superlative praise and his people love him so much, I sometimes wonder if Beowulf's downfall at the end of the book comes because he hasn't adjusted his idea of what it means to be a king. He's still a Greek hero in a different age, and Hrothgar is more the king that the people need. And then comes King Arthur. Though there are many tellings and retellings of the Arthur legends, there's so many that it's hard to give a perfect picture of him. One thing all the legends have in common is how he handled powerful men. Seeing wars tearing apart Britain, as small kingdoms fought one another, he unified the country by putting might at the service of the needy. He gathered the great knights together for his famous round table, and he put them at the beck and call of whoever needed them. Their arms were meant to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The great men became the servants of all, bound by a call to protect and to help those who were less fortunate and less gifted than they were. Arthur takes some of the few men in literature who could be compared in their might and their glory to the warriors of the ancient world, and he makes them servants. They are great and glorious and powerful servants. And for a little while, he brings peace to the world. They take on the cares of England, and for a little while, it's at peace. It's important and a big discussion to know why it didn't last. So as we look ahead to the next school year, what kind of society are we going to build? One where the great and the powerful must take and fight and win. I think I have to tell you that the time for that, I think, is over. Something changed with the coming of Christ. History had to change, and kingship had to change with it. This is something that I think Hrothgar and Arthur knew, and Beowulf had to learn. It was time for the great to be at the service of the small. And this is what I wish for us as we enter the new school year. You are the oldest students in our school. You're the smartest, the strongest, the most independent. There will be 17 new students in high school this year, 12 of whom will have never met any of you. And there will be dozens of little kids watching you and looking up to you and admiring you. You will, in turn, have a choice. What will you do with your power, your greatness, your place in the school? You could wield it like a weapon to rule and to win, or you could bend it to service. I think it's clear what's asked of us. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. The co-eternal Son of God limited himself to become a man, and unexpectedly, unthinkably, came as a poor man, a humble man, a man that would be killed. I think the disciples are so unprepared for this, so surprised by it when it happens, because nothing had ever prepared them for this before. Everything that came before told them that great men did great things, held great office, great riches, and great fame. And in Christ, And for the all time after Christ, the image of greatness is changed forever. And whatever was left of warrior culture, and much was left that we see for thousands of years after, had to change with it. The great now had a new job to do. And you have a new job to do. I need my visual aid. This is Galen Gilbert. He is, look at the computer screens of all these people. He is, barring one, the very youngest member of our school. He can't walk. He can't eat solid food. He can't talk. And he has to take several naps a day just to manage. Well, you can do all of those things, usually without several naps. And you are now, in Christ, his servant. The newest, youngest kindergartner, the most insecure and awkward freshman, the guy in class that is driving you insane, you who are great and good and probably better in innumerable ways, are their servant. And I am yours. So far as I have been given ability, capacity, strength, and opportunity to start this school and live the life that I've lived, I am your servant and have done all of those things, even when I haven't done them well, as your servant. We all serve for you, and we need you to serve for them. This is the very order of the universe now, because it pleased God to make it so. He created a world in which the last shall be first, and the little children are always welcomed into the very lap of God. This is a world in which you are each other's to be cared for and protected, where the strong must serve the weak, because that is the model God gives us for living a good life, a life in accord with the very fabric of the true things of the world. This is a world in which Aragorn is at the service of a hobbit, and a lion will lay down his life for a child, and Sidney Carton can go to the guillotine for another, knowing that this is the best thing he has ever done. It is a beautiful and meaningful world that is repeated and remembered every time you care for someone who needs you, and every time you use the power given to you to serve another. If I could say just one thing about the life that we get to live together in community, it would be that you are each other's servants. And the littler the person, the more they need your service. And the more it is in your power to give them. Look how happy you make him just by holding him there. And the more it is in your power to give them. But the truth of this actually only goes so far. For you, like Christ, were not left as servants, but called to be brothers and sisters. You were called to be friends. Those who serve from a place of strength do so as friends, just as God in Christ has made you his friend. We have the opportunity to build a place where all of our strengths are at the service of all of our friends, where those of you who are outgoing and friendly and unafraid can use those strengths to make everyone feel at home. Those of you who are smart and quick and good at school can help those who struggle, and can use your ability to lead in class not to lord it over those who are less gifted, but to elevate every person in the room and help them learn. On field days, those of you that are athletic can help the rest of us that are clumsy or young or slow so that everyone can thrive. At our dances, the young men can be at the service of every single young woman so that everyone dances and everyone has fun. To do this, we have to put a lot of our fears and our insecurities aside. Remember what Mr. Yeast said earlier, that I guess Mr. Mueller said to him, that humility isn't ignoring or denying your strengths. We need your strengths. Humility is simply not thinking about yourself as much as you think about the people around you. It's letting go of whatever the fear that's stuck inside you is that keeps you from being who you need to be. I don't know who I would be without Chris and Lily. If Chris hadn't been able to let go of his fear and live in his strength, I would have been totally alone in Houston. But instead, God sat across from me, the most loyal friend in the universe. When we started St. Constantine, Lily came with me and took all of the parts of my job that she's better at than I am. And every time she answers the phone, I think about how lucky those people are that they're talking to the nicest woman in the universe and not me. I'd be like, oh my God, no, go away. And I could say the exact same thing about every teacher in this room. We were pulled together with many differences and many strengths, and God has used our community to create something. He has used it to bring you guys together, and so the community continues to expand. What will He do with your strengths? Who will come alongside you in their strength and make something new? This is an image of community that really excites me. People are already amazed at you guys. When I tell people back home what y'all are like, what you're willing to study and invest yourselves in, that we enjoy spending time with you and hosting events with you, they think we found some like freak magical group of teenagers that are unlike any teenager they've ever met before. This isn't true. You are very normal people, sort of. You're very normal in your abilities and your personalities and your limitations. But you have been given a great opportunity to be awesome, and you've taken it. And we love you for it. Now imagine, along with everything else, we could build a place in which a bunch of teenagers didn't have to be afraid or cruel or insecure or lonely. What if we built a place where all of you were at home, where you knew you belonged, and that your strengths were valued and used and needed? It is totally and completely possible. It is a cultural accident and a great mistake that teenagers are treated the way that they are, as exaggerated children who are less obedient and more unhappy than they should be. There's no reason why the growth of your gifts can't correspond with the growth of your freedom and your uses in community and your happiness. You don't have to be alone and unhappy and insecure just because you're a teenager. You can be at home and needed and happy and free. What would it look like to use your strengths to build a community that everyone wanted to be a part of? How can you make our school a better place for little children? How can you enjoy every event as a generous and kind leader who's at home wherever you are? We promise to do our part, to provide a place in which you can be as awesome as you want to be. And the rest is up to you. What kind of place do you want to build with one another? There's 27 of you here, and there's 46 of you in the whole high school. You who are here, who've heard the vision and gotten to know one another and spent this time thinking about your school year, it is up to you to shape the high school community that you want, to invite the other 19 into the kind of place you want to build, and to set the standard that people will look at for years to come. This is only the second year of this school. You are setting the tone not just for yourselves, but for years of students who follow you and already watch you. So what kind of place do you want to make? And what will you build?